I know that the whole world is watching my country right now. You might be wondering why I'm not talking about last night's events. Simple. I recorded this before the events of Tuesday evening, so at the time of producing this, I haven't any idea what's happened yet. I'd love to be able to see the future, but, I don't have that grace. But the events of the day must be discussed, and just because the biggest event of 2020 happened last night, and honestly is probably still grinding along as you hear this, doesn't mean that the rest of the world has decided to stop everything it's doing. If you want to know what I think of the events of yesterday, check out the stream I did covering that event in real time. But enough of that, because that's not why you chose this one. Some interesting, if mixed, news comes to us today from the United Kingdom. Over there, Caesar has decided to put a stop to the public saying of the Mass again. History generally views this sort of thing unfavorably, to put it mildly, yet Caesar does not appear that he is willing to be swayed on this score. The excuse is, well, precisely what you imagine it to be. It goes with the current zeitgeist, and Caesar is doing what it feels must be done. That is all fine and dandy, I suppose, but what makes this interesting isn't really what Caesar is doing, or its reasoning, since we all sort of expected to see it anyway. What's interesting about it is that the bishops of the UK appear to not be accepting this move unquestionably. They're not responding in the most strong manner either, but at least they're doing something. Some are, dare I say it, trying at least to act as shepherds and speak for their flock. I'm as surprised as you are about that. We'll go over that today in brief, though I do want to mention something first. Benedict XVI has reportedly said that he knows that his time is drawing short. In other words, he will pass on to his eternal reward soon. Regardless of what you may think of Benedict XVI personally, please keep him in your prayers. But first, I wanted to say thanks to the patrons of this channel, whose support keeps these messages coming. Your support is deeply appreciated. If you want to support the work of this channel, especially in these times when Catholic voices for truth are quietly being pushed aside and things seem very uncertain, you can do so by clicking that join button below your screen if you're on YouTube, or by joining us on Patreon or Subscribestar. Options in general are in the description box of this podcast episode. Supporting the work of Catholic Voices helps keep these messages coming. So thank you, and again, thank you to our patrons of this channel. Now, on to our story. So here we go. In the UK, there will be no masses available again. People will be streaming it online, or more likely, they won't be. This coincides with the Vatican action reported on Monday, where the Christmas liturgy isn't happening for the first time since ever, really. Truly, the diabolic is at work in all of this, as the celebration of the Easter feast was also scrapped by the hierarchy in many, if not most places. And the results? Prelates who don't seem to have realized the cost of what they have chosen to do. It's truly remarkable, as many are preparing to do all of this again, while also wondering why their parishes and their dioceses suddenly are running out of funds, and a lot of people didn't come back to Mass when they could. If only the ability to do some basic math was required to become a bishop of the Church. Regardless, this isn't America that I'm talking about, though I'm sure that we'll see it soon ourselves. I'm talking about the United Kingdom, as I said a moment ago, but there is a difference. Some of the bishops are asking why this is necessary and pointing out that public worship is critical to maintaining the spirits of the faithful. Yes, in other words, there appears to be some bishops who have learned the lesson of 2020, at least the lesson they need to learn, at least in part, which is that as shepherds of the Church, their duty is to the faithful first. I don't have a comprehensive list of the bishops who remembered that they're shepherds, and that one day that they will have to stand before our blessed Lord and give a full accounting of what they have chosen to do as shepherds. But I do at this time have information on two who did remember. First is Bishop Philip Egan of Portsmouth, who said publicly that he has requested of Caesar that masses will still be available to the faithful. Interesting move, and while I commend his spirit on this, he should have had a more forceful response. But any movement in the right direction must be lauded to a certain degree. He announced this on Twitter, and the faithful were, we'll say, less than thrilled, demanding that he keep the Mass available, come what may. That is the correct response. So the bishop is not going along unquestionably, but his response isn't as good as it should be, we'll say. The other bishop is Bishop Patrick McKinney of Notts, who reached out to Caesar's assistants to demand that this move not be accepted. That is a better response, but what will Bishop McKinney actually do? I will remind people what our Lord says about these kinds of things. Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and render unto God what belongs to God. The Mass belongs to God. The faithful belong to God, full stop. Caesar can no more interject himself in the Mass than Bishop Egan could interject himself into a discussion on value-added taxes or the regulation of where power or telephone lines be. Yet in our time this has been enabled because the Church has tied many of its corporal works of mercy to Caesar by taking his pieces of silver to promote those works that cross over into areas of mutual interest with Caesar. The result? The best response from the bishops is actually barely a response at all when Caesar does what Caesar always does in the modern world. If you want to read their statements, I have them for you on the Sources blog, which can be found at returntotradition.org, and those can be found linked in today's show notes. The statements were made via Twitter, as well as probably the local diocesan print publications, but as I am about 3,000 miles from them, I don't have access. I suppose it could be worse. Cardinal Cupich of Chicago recently stated that by hiding the Imago Dei in accordance with Caesar, you grow in holiness. That statement is so ridiculous that it doesn't even need to be responded to. Cardinal Cupich is honestly one of those prelates that continues to be a source of absolute joy and laughter, but not for the reasons he would like to be. Of course, the reason that this is happening is because it is all part of the big new beginning that is being promoted right now pretty much everywhere. Never let a good opportunity go to waste, and the Vatican is fully on board with that operation. I don't know what Francis's goal is with going along with all of this. What comes to mind is the Martin Sheen movie, The Catholics, from the early 1970s, where the Pope no longer calls himself that name after the 7th or 8th Vatican Council, but rather calls himself the Father General, and is the single head of all traditions, and he works in conjunction with the movers of the world and their goals. Think about that for a moment, and think about what we're seeing with the ending of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day liturgical events in the Vatican. If you're thinking along these lines too, I don't think you're being paranoid in the slightest. That is why I put out a call on Twitter suggesting that people take the opportunity that is before us to pursue holiness and to break the bad habits that send you to confession. Some people still have access to the sacrament for now, but won't, as the are dutifully going along with the demands of Caesar in most places, especially if things did not go the way most of my audience would have wanted them to go last night. I suspect things remain uncertain on that score, but again, who really knows? We live in a time of universal deceit, and I suspect as I write this that the way this has been talked about by the opinion makers for weeks and months now is far from the reality that played out. But again, as I write this before that all goes down, who really knows? So we have two bishops who sort of stood up to Caesar in the UK. Do you think anything will come of it? By now, has anything come of it? Let me know in the comment section, and let me know what you think the chances are that Mass where you are is likely to be available in the near future. I hope that it is, but I am not optimistic. So please keep praying for the Church and keep praying for my country if you can. And if the diocesan Masses aren't available to you soon, you may need to start opening yourself up to alternative possibilities to where to receive the sacraments. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.